The bill seeking to prohibit the use of foreign currency in Nigeria has scaled first reading in the House of Senate. The bill, titled A Bill for an Act to Alter the Central Bank of Nigeria Act 2007, number 7, to prohibit the use of foreign currencies for remuneration and other related matters, was sponsored by the chairman of the Senate Committee on Reparations and Repatriation, Senator Ned Nwoko. It was reported that the proposed legislation is aimed at ensuring all payments, including salaries and other transactions, are done using the local currency, and that is the naira. This morning, we're joined by Vincent Oshoma, securities dealer at Midpoint Capital Limited. Thank you so much, Mr. Oshoma, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
So what is your take on the bill seeking to prohibit the use of foreign currency in Nigeria?
Yes, for me, I think there are a lot of reservation about the bill, because when you look at the goal of the bill is good. All the issues that they tend to tackle, they are things that are germane, are things that need resolution. But when you look at the approach that is being taken, I think it will throw up a lot of issues, and I think that are unnecessary. First of all, let me take it the first one. They already have the law in the CBN Act that makes the naira the legal tender in Nigeria. So it just has to do with implementing those laws and making sure that people are held accountable in terms of the CBN. Then the issue about showing up the value of the naira. I don't think this bill, as much as the intention is good, is going to actually achieve that aim. Because when you look at it, the main thing is that the value of naira is driven by forces of demand and supply. So you need to look at areas where we can increase our production, because one of the things that actually affect the naira is because we have a lot of importation in Nigeria. So when we are import dependent, especially for food and for other items, it affects the value of the naira. Then now talk about exports. Outside earnings from oil, there are a lot of other areas we need to look at that we can enhance our export, enhance our production, so that we can increase the demand for the naira by foreign. Because when you are exporting, when you have we improve areas we have comparative advantage in terms of agricultural products and all the likes. You will see people looking at importing things from Nigeria. I think that would increase the demand for goods from Nigeria and also show up the value of the naira. Another thing I think will bring up issue is that you want people to be buying goods in naira, force them to buy things from Nigeria in naira. But one of the things that we have seen recently is that the volatility with respect to naira. If you look at the United States, one of the things that makes the US dollar one of the most sought after currency, it has to do with its stability. So it can be a currency that you can use to hold value. So people can actually change their currency to dollar for years and still expect that the value to be relatively the same. But you can't really say that of the naira. I think and that is not because we have not made a law that makes it compulsory for people to buy in naira. It's just because of other factors in terms of things that we have comparative advantage that we have not developed, and also increasing our exports and reducing our imports. I think those are the issues that I think they should focus more on in trying to show up our production ability and also reduce our importation. I think that's more germane, that's more important than looking at putting laws that will be very difficult to implement. One thing, one thing people will always say that it is always very difficult to legislate on human behavior. You can encourage it and create the environment to build it. But when you just go ahead and legislate, at the end of the day, you have a law that people will look for ways, even especially the elites in Nigeria, will look for ways to circumvent that law, and it will be difficult for those in authority to implement that law.
And critics also, have come out to argue that the naira has been under pressure due to inflation, low foreign reserves. You mentioned that in passing, economic instability, so to speak. And until those issues are addressed, this dollar ban is a ruse. What do you think of those factors also?
That's very, very correct, because like I mentioned, Nigeria is import dependent, and when you look at the current inflation, it has to do with food inflation, and has to do with the crisis in the country, and that have led to a lot of importation. And that is definitely going to affect the implementation of this bill. So it's something that the people that are promoting this bill have to look at. I think it is more important to look at reducing food inflation. And how do you reduce food inflation? It's not by putting foreign law that affects that will make it compulsory to trade in naira, transact in naira. It's all about looking at what are the things that are causing this food inflation and looking at policies that will help address this issue. Insecurity in the north, how can we quickly resolve that? And also, how can we enhance our value chain, the production value chain, the agricultural value chain, so that we can improve our production and also be able to improve the value of it? Because one of the things is that a lot of things we export raw materials and import finished goods. How can we add to the goods that we produce in this country so that we can enhance the value and not having to import finished goods after exporting raw materials? I'll give you a good example. If you look at Nigeria today, we have an advantage to be a major exporter of palm oil. Some years back, we were exporting palm oil. But today, as much as we are producing locally, there's still a lot of importation. The government should be thinking of how can we end importation in that area. What about wheat production? We import a lot of flour into the raw wheat that is now processed into flour. How can we make sure that we are able to produce these commodities in Nigeria without having to import? I think, and also when we are able to be sufficient locally, we can now export. Some years ago, Nigeria used to import wholesale cement and now rebag it. But today, we are now exporter of cement. And that's because of targeted government policy that drove us there. And now, thank God that it's good that we are now reducing our importation of refined petroleum products. Those are the things areas that we can look at and also enhance export. Aside production, look at our ports. How can we make it easy for exporters to export so that our goods can be competitive in the international market? I think policies like that will help in driving and sustaining, improving the value of naira and also sustaining it than having policies that just make it legislate to force people to enhance the value of the naira.
You've spoken highly of the policies of government, and you've also mentioned the need for the reduction in importation and the need to improve the values in terms of what we export out of the country. But then the 2025 budget recently presented by the president, about 644 billion, so to speak, was allocated to the agricultural sector. Do you think that would be enough to probably change the narrative and improve the values in that sector?
Yeah, I think it's good, but beyond the budget to agriculture, there are also other budgets that we affect. But one is the security budget. You know, one of the things that is affecting the agricultural sector currently is the insecurity in the north. If we are able to solve that, I think it will help a lot of farmers return back to the farm, and also we'll be able to improve our agricultural production. As much as we have 600 and something billion, we need more to be allocated to the agricultural sector. Well, one thing is that the president have talked about, we have seen a lot of talk by this government about improving agricultural production. Even they talk about livestock production. I think there's still a lot to be done for us to see what is being done in trying to match those talks with action. Because Nigeria has a lot of land. When you look at the arable land we have in Nigeria that is not cultivated, I think if these are put to use, we can be able to increase our production, feed ourselves, and also make a lot of exports. There has been a lot of comparison with countries that have lesser land mass compared to Nigeria, but are actually exporting a lot of foods to the world. I think if we can also do both from them, and also under eating that the government needs to do more, beyond the federal government action, I think there's also a lot of expectation from the state government because they have a lot to play. Because Nigerian agricultural system is still largely subsistent, that we have the local farmers. I think we need more mechanized agriculture to be able to enhance the production outputs. I think that's what we need to see. Beyond what the federal government in the national budget, we need to see discussion in the states to look at what area of comparative advantage every state has to build on that.
Okay, so I'm looking at this possible ban on foreign currencies and how it would affect the bureau de change operators and mint merchants. The possibility of this set of people being run out of business is also there. Do you feel concerned about this?
Yes, it's something that will definitely affect them. But one thing is that you cannot stop. It will be difficult to actually stop the the use of the dollar in Nigeria exchange, because one thing that, like I said, is difficult to stop it. But what I think they should look at reducing it, looking at working with the CBN. I don't know in level of interaction with the CBN and also those in this sector in terms of what this bill aims to achieve. I think with more interaction with the stakeholders in the foreign exchange sector market, I think we'll be able to achieve a lot of things that this bill set to achieve without having to actually to promulgate a bill that helps achieve that. Because I believe that we already have laws in the system, especially the one that makes the Naira the only legal tender in the country. But you now have to look at what the other things around it. I'll give you a good example. You talked about telling people to buy goods in Naira. But you know that in the oil sector is largely dominated by foreigners. If you force them to transact in Naira, for them to be able to repatriate their funds, they will have to convert it to dollar. That will also mean that you convert to Naira and you convert back to dollar. I think that will throw up more issues than what is being targeted at solving. I think it's something that needs to be discussed for us to, as much as possible, so for now, reduce it to the barest minimum. Because the major reason, like I said, that have actually pushed people to resort to foreign currency are two factors. One, increased importation, and two, the fact that we are not able to meet a lot of needs locally. Many people will have to demand for foreign exchange and thereby putting pressure on the Naira. Like we talk about the oil sector, refined petroleum products, that has been something. What about the educational sector? You see a lot of person demand for foreign exchange because of people going to schools abroad. What have we done to enhance our educational system? Also the medical tourism. I think these are some of those things that the government needs to look at comprehensively to actually look at ways of enhancing the value of the Naira, not about legislating on how you can force people to use it, especially when you don't have comparative advantage in that area.
It's quite interesting that this also scales to foreign currency international transactions that Nigeria has with other countries. There's also diaspora remittances and even private sector operations that would equally be possibly affected, definitely, not even possibly, by this particular ban. I'm not sure if the government, or so to speak, the lawmaker or the legislative house is actually looking at the full implication of the possibility of this ban in those regards.
Yes, I quite agree with you. Like I said, the goals, the targets for the bill, they are things that are welcome, things that are desirable, are things I think the issues we need to resolve. But I think using this bill, using the laws that have been put in place to achieve those purposes, I think that will become the issue. I think with more interaction, with more discussion with stakeholders, the CBN and other stakeholders, I think we'll look at ways of achieving those aims without actually legislating on that. At the end, because if we don't do that, at the end of the day, we can get a bill that will be difficult for the government to implement, or it will be resort to people looking at ways of circumventing the bill to be able to achieve their goal, because the environment has not been created for them to be actually work in getting things done with respect to this bill. So I think more interaction, more negotiation, discussion needs to be made before we end up with this bill.
So, okay, so I'm just looking at this in a very, very broad scope, all right? Now, Eurobonds are typically used, or issued rather, in foreign currencies, primarily, dollars, and the government this year, if you would recall, floated its first domestic dollar bond. Now, won't this ban also create some sort of uncertainty for these instruments and make them unattractive too?
Yes, it can have because when you look at those instruments that are issued, the local dollar bond, there are instruments that are issued in dollar. People definitely, there will be demand for those dollar in terms of subscribing to those currency. I think definitely having laws like this will affect Nigeria because, like I mentioned, you have foreigners. There are laws in this country that one of the things that encourage foreign investors, the ability to repatriate their funds. But so when you bring bills like this, in one way or the other, we affect their investment because everything is being done, except there are provisions in the bill that allows for such transactions. So like I said, it still has to, a lot of things need to be looked at before we end up with this bill, because it will have an impact both locally and internationally. People will do that. Because I'll give you a good example. The US don't have euro bonds because they have a strong currency that has become people can use to store value. They don't issue euro bonds. They only issue their bonds in their the local currency, and people subscribe to that. You hardly find people going to the US think of using foreign currency in the US because they can comfortably transfer. Even before coming to US, they already have their US dollar to transact with. Not because they have been forced to do that, but because the environment allows them, the system allows them, they still say stability. So I think there are other things the government can do to achieve stability for Naira. Because another thing I was going to say is that if you look at investment, our assets in Nigeria, financial instruments, they are quite attractive in terms of return. One of the things and if you have people coming in, investing in those assets, there will be a lot of stability for the Naira. But the concern for most people is the volatility in the exchange market. And so you see people staying in the sideline, not coming to Nigeria to invest. So it's not because people there is no law to make it compulsory for it. It's because of other factors. And those factors can be taken care of without you actually passing a law that forces people to transact in Naira. We already have a law that makes the Naira the legal tender in Nigeria.
Yes, and you would recall that in November this year, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump threatened to impose 100% tariffs on BRICS if it jettisons the U.S. dollar, of course, as a rival currency, as we've always seen. So wouldn't that be setting Nigeria on a war path with the U.S.?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
So I said, the President-elect Donald Trump warned, or should I say threatened, the BRICS that they should not stop using the dollar. Now, Nigeria is thinking or proposing on banning foreign currency, including the dollar. Wouldn't that be setting a path of war between Nigeria and the U.S.?
Yeah, yes, it's expected, because you know that Trump comes with the mantra of America first. And although he's not yet the president, he's already warning the BRICS country not to do anything that will affect the dollar, and that it will be repatriation, that there will be sanctions on them too. So definitely anything if President Trump, when he becomes president, feels that the ban is going to threaten the American economy, definitely he will come up with his own sanction, the way he has threatened the BRICS economy. Definitely that will have impact, because Trump, his mantra, his goal is the fact that whatever benefits you get from America, you definitely have to, one way or the other, of putting American first. So if it will have America, Nigeria have business with America, also we get a lot of weapon importation from America. And the last time Trump was the one that allowed Nigeria to purchase some weapons. So if Nigeria is coming with policies that Trump feels that will affect the US dollar, definitely it will have an impact on the US interaction with Nigeria.
Okay, well, Vincent Oshoma, securities dealer, Midpoint Capital Limited, thank you so much for your contribution on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.